Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasudi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. So welcome. I see lots of black screens, so I don't get to see everyone today. But please accept my pranams anyways. So today we'll begin the study of Nectar of Devotion. I'm very, very excited to study this most wonderful presentation given to us by Srila Rupa Goswami and presented by Srila Prabhupada. So today we'll be discussing the preface to the Nectar of Devotion. So there are a few main points in the preface. The first point gives basically a history of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and its author. In our study of Nectar of Instruction, we discussed the history of Srila Rupa Goswami, and so we'll not go through all of that again, but it is very sweet to hear the great pastimes of Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami that Srila Prabhupada presents in the beginning of this preface. And we know that we are followers of Rupa Goswami, and thus we are Rupanugas. The second point that Srila Prabhupada presents in the preface is he presents the primary subject, and this is what we'll spend the time today discussing, this Bhakti Rasa. So Nectar of Devotion is presented as a summary study of the book entitled Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So this is a series of verses actually presented in Sanskrit by Srila Rupa Goswami. As we know, he was instructed in Prayag at Dashavedam Ghat for 10 consecutive days about the science of devotional service by none other than Krishna himself as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he received the direct mercy and instruction. And he was instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to then write about what he had learned. And so we are getting direct instruction through Rupa Goswami from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the details of how to perform devotional service. We'll understand in this book the stages of devotional service and how we progress from the initial stages of bhakti all the way up to Krishna Prema. And what are the specific processes to follow? What are the different moods and emotions that one should try to inculcate? And things we should avoid. And so much detail And so Srila Prabhupada called this the science book of Bhakti Yoga. The subtitle is The Complete Science of Bhakti Yoga. It's presenting the very details, the step-by-step process of how to perfect devotional service. So that is the, and so in the purport, in the purport to the preface, the Srila Prabhupada comments on the title of the book, and the title of the book is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So he goes kind of word by word, and so in today's discussion, we'll discuss each of these 4 words, what they mean in some detail, and then we'll put it all together. And we'll conclude with a discussion. The last 2 paragraphs of the preface are very, very sweet and very, very instructive. They're worth reading over and over again. And so we'll discuss those last 2 paragraphs about love and ultimately our need for love and our need to find where to repose our love. So that'll be what we'll discuss today. So Srila Prabhupada translates bhakti. He says bhakti implies devotion or love. And so love, we know, it is shown through service. If I love somebody, I can say I love them. But more powerful expression of my love, of saying, is to do something for that person. If I love my mother, I may render some service to her. So the service is an expression of one's love. And thus, Srila Prabhupada very beautifully translates bhakti as devotional service. Service, which is an expression of our devotion or our love. And so this is the mood that we should try to bring about. That when we do devotional service, it is our love being expressed through that service. Every single service we do, I am trying to express my love. Whether I am cooking for Krishna is an expression of love to Krishna. Whether I'm sweeping the floors, whether I am, decorating the deity, whether I am distributing flyers for Rath Yatra, kind of timely, or whether we are doing anything, it is an expression of our love. Then it is bhakti. So when we actually see it this way, then actually we create no hierarchy of service. Oh, this service is better than that service. No, because all bhakti, all devotion is an expression of our love. When we chant our rounds, we should be in a mood of expressing our love for Krishna. So that is why Srila Prabhupada very beautifully translates bhakti as devotional service. It is the expression of our love to Krishna via service. And it implies also that there's an activity. Bhakti is an active engagement, not just an emotional sentiment, but it is actually activity. And Rupa Goswami is going to explain to us these details of activities in the coming chapters. Okay. So now, the second word in our title, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is rasa. And this word rasa, it does not have a easy or direct translation in English, so we'll work our way towards it. But let's step back and understand that everyone is engaged in some kind of service. We are either serving family, society, job, our dog, but we are serving someone. We cannot avoid service. It is impossible. And that is because of our inherent need for love. And I'll come back to this point at the end of today's presentation. But just file away. Service is an intrinsic nature of the soul. And so to do service, there must be some impetus. And that impetus that drives one to perform a service is the pleasure we get from it. Otherwise, we'll not do it. If there is no return, no reciprocation in that service, then we'll not do it. That's why we cannot render service or love to something inanimate, this microphone stand. I cannot render service to it because there's no reciprocation back. So love is always expressed through two living entities. And there must be some reciprocation back, right? So like if I say I love my job, well, I love maybe the paycheck, maybe I love the position, the feeling of accomplishment. There's some reciprocation. I love my family because there is some reciprocation back. If there was no reciprocation back, our love would dissipate. So, rasa, again, not an easy word to translate. Literally, it means juice. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has translated it as mellow. And mellow also is not an easy word to understand, but it means it's the sweet and relishable part of the ripened fruit. So we can understand mellow to be the relishably sweet taste of a fruit. So the pleasure we experience in a piece of fruit is its juice, its sweet juice. Similarly, in any relationship, there is a rasa, there is a taste, a pleasure that inspires one to render service in that relationship. So there is a taste that emerges. Right? So the taste that attracts us to the fruit is its juice. The attractive feature that inspires us to engage in a relationship is the sweet taste of that relationship. That is the rasa. So there are two types of rasa. And we have mundane rasa and bhakti rasa. So there is a sweetness or a taste that exists in mundane relationships and in transcendental relationship with Krishna. So we'll do a little bit of comparing and contrasting. Okay? And just to define the mundane rasa a little bit, is that the mundane rasa is rasa experienced in the material world from sense gratification. What rasa drives a philanthropist or a family man or a nationalist? Right? It is some taste, either affection for family, honor from the nation, some feeling of goodness from helping others. Okay? So there are two characteristics of mundane rasa. Right? And the first characteristic is this bhoga tyaga. And this is the flipping between renunciation and sense enjoyment. We keep changing our position from bhoga, enjoying, to tyaga, renunciation. Trying to find a place that we can get some happiness and peace. Srila Prabhupada gives the example in the purport that, one works very hard day and night in the office during the week, but eventually wants to renounce and try to enjoy on the weekend. But after enjoying on the weekend for some time, they go back to working again very hard. And so this constant flipping between sense enjoyment and renunciation. This is what happens in mundane rasa. We engage our senses for some time, but then we renounce it, becoming tired of it. But after renouncing for some time, we again want to enjoy the senses. And thus we are vacillating. And this changing is due to a very specific reason. Because we are trying to enjoy out of our constitutional position. Just like a fish out of water is constantly flapping. Because it is trying to enjoy that fish out of its natural position, which is in the water. So when we engage in mundane rasa, this bhoga tyaga is manifest because we are not in our constitutional position, and thus we cannot remain there fixed. So that is the duration of that rasa. The next aspect is chapala shuka, which means the happiness tasted, the rasa that we taste, is very flickering or temporary. So shuka means happiness and chapala means flickering or temporary. So it is one of temporary happiness. We enjoy it for some time, but the pleasure doesn't last. Right? The happiness is short-lived. How much happiness do we get from our favorite movie? It's very short-lived. Or, from some song, or we're on some vacation. Even the beauty of a vacation, it's short-lived. We don't enjoy it very long. And that's why we see how many varieties of TV channels there are. Because we're not getting the enjoyment we want. How many varieties of foodstuffs exist? We're constantly trying to satisfy this taste. So this rasa is very temporary. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport takes it even further to discuss that it's so temporary that everything that all the rasas we are trying to accumulate in this life, they all vanquish at death. We spend an entire lifetime trying to satisfy, the family and the relationships. But upon death, all those relationships, all the rasa from those relationships are gone. Everything is finished at the time of death. So all of our material happiness, it's gone at that time of death. So it's very limited in its duration. So the point of mundane rasa is that the pleasure, it's very limited in quantity and it's very limited in duration. Now let's compare to bhakti rasa. Bhakti rasa is considered amrita, which means eternal. So what is the rasa relished in transcendental service to Krishna? It is eternal. So whatever sweetness I taste, it doesn't end. Not even with this life. Unlike mundane rasa, which is eternal, we can go on chanting Hare, Krishna, and Rama. Just 3 words. For hours and hours and days and years and lifetimes and lifetimes. And the sweetness is ever increasing. It never declines. So this is the nature of bhakti rasa. That is internal. And it is eternal because we are now in our constitutional position. Just like Bhoga Tyaga, why we're constantly flipping back and forth is because we are out of our natural environment. But when we engage in relationship with Krishna in devotional service and bhakti, then we can enjoy that rasa eternally because that is our nature. That is our constitutional position. The rasa of pizza or the rasa of fame, the rasa of money, that is not eternal. But the rasa of our relationship with Krishna, that is a pleasure that lasts eternally and is eternally pleasing. So even at the end of this life, that relationship, that pleasure from a relationship with Krishna doesn't end. It carries on to the next life and to the next life. So it is thus eternal. The next quality of bhakti rasa, it is unlimited, like a sindhu, like an ocean. It is ever increasing and unlimited in quantity. There is not that, I can get to the bottom of all of the rasa of bhakti. I can taste it all. It is actually ever increasing. In the spiritual world, the enjoyment in relationship for Krishna is eternally increasing. And we cannot wrap our minds around this because everything in the material world is finite. We can define it. Even outer space, which seems infinite, it's still definable. And Srimad Bhagavatam gives us exactly the distances, left to right, up and down of the universe. It's finite. But in the spiritual world, everything is infinite. It is ever expanding. So the bhakti rasa has an incalculably superior taste. Limitless. Srila Rupa Goswami says, if Brahmanda, the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, is multiplied 1 trillion-fold, it still cannot be compared to an atomic fraction of the happiness derived from the ocean of devotional service. So this rasa in bhakti is so deep and profound, and we'll see some details of that in the coming chapters. But Prabhupada makes a comment in the purport that the rasa of bhakti is sufficient to produce the feeling of liberation. Now, what does that mean? Why is that the case? What it means is bhakti is so fulfilling, so complete, the rasa from bhakti, that nothing ever enters the mind. Nobody wants anything else. There's nothing else one can achieve. It is the pinnacle, the ultimate. There's no more searching. There's no more, well, I wish I had this on top of that. Ask the millionaire. When they get their $1 million, have they reached the pinnacle? Are they satisfied? No. They want more and more and more. So when the rasa of bhakti is tasted, it produces the feeling of liberation because one has achieved perfection. Nothing more, not even wanting to go to the spiritual world. That desire is not there because one is already experiencing, wherever they may be, complete and absolute happiness and pleasure. Liberation is only interesting if one can serve Krishna, because the rasa comes from the service from Krishna, not from the geographic destination. So the pleasure of going to the spiritual world is in the relationship with Krishna. So if one is awakened their relationship with Krishna, even in the hellish planets, they have achieved the experience of liberation because they have that rasa in the relationship with Krishna. And this is the profound topic that Srila Prabhupada is presenting by presenting Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu to us. So there are 5 primary bhakti rasas that we'll discuss in this section, in this Nectar devotion. And there are many more rasas explained in the later parts that we'll not study during this discussion. So in summary, the mundane rasa, it's not a place we can be eternally. And the happiness is limited because we are not in our constitutional position. But bhakti rasa, it is the natural position of the soul, and thus one can enjoy it eternally, and there is an unlimited amount of taste to enjoy. We'll never get to the bottom of it. And thus bhakti rasa is far, far superior to mundane rasa. Okay? So now let's put the whole title together of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So bhakti means, again, devotional service. Rasa means the pleasure, the taste from that relationship with Krishna. Amrita means it is eternal. The taste is eternal. And Sindhu literally means ocean, and it implies unlimited. Okay? Not just a few drops, but an unlimited ocean. So Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when we put it together, means the pleasure from devotional service is everlasting and unlimited like an ocean. And so this is what Srila Rupa Goswami is trying to inspire us to understand, that this pleasure from bhakti is everlasting and unlimited. And thus he is going to explain how to practice bhakti and what is bhakti and the different stages of bhakti and all the details of bhakti and the different rasas and pleasures experienced in devotional service. That is the contents of this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So now we'll discuss the final section of this preface, which is the topic of love. The basic principle of the living entity and the living condition is that we have a general propensity to love someone. we cannot be happy without satisfying this need. It is impossible to be happy without satisfying this need for love. And we have some practical experience of this. But, if you are on an island all by yourself with all the money and all the facilities of the world, but there was no one there to enjoy it with, maybe for some short while you would be happy, but ultimately you would be unhappy. Because the rasa that we search, it comes from interactions with others. So the question is not if we will then render service, it is simply to whom. Because service is the innate relationship, service is the intrinsic activity of the soul because of the eternal and universal desire for all of us to experience love. And love can only be experienced through service. So I said earlier that service cannot be avoided by the living entity. We are all serving somebody because we are all in search of love. So again, the question is not if to serve, it is only whom to serve. And we see in society, people are reposing their love to so many different things. Serving their family, nation, their job, their pets, community, so many different areas of love. But we know that something is missing. And how do we know it's missing? Because we're constantly switching, going from different aspects. Because we're not getting the rasa, the happiness that we want. And there's a reason our material love is never satisfied. The material love is never satisfied because the reciprocation we get is imperfect. If I love my country, is it rewarding me and reciprocating me perfectly? No. We always want something that other party cannot give. They are limited. If I love my family, maybe they don't acknowledge me exactly how I want it. We often see this between husband and wife. The reciprocation is not perfect. We are limited by our time, by our understanding of that other person, by our ability to reciprocate. And thus, it is imperfect. So when we repose our love in material realms, we're always faced with this frustrating experience. And so we go through life loving, and if we look back at our history of our life, we have loved so many people, so many different things. But if it was satisfying, why we would ever moved on to the next thing, to the next group of friends, to the next relationships? It's because it's unsatisfying. So, how to satisfy this eternal need for love? It can only be satisfied when that love is reposed to Krishna. And that is the conclusion Srila Prabhupada brings us to in his presentation of the preface. That our need for love is only satisfied when it is reposed at the lotus feet of Krishna through bhakti. So we must know where to show our love. Again, not a question of if, but to whom we're going to serve. And then the question becomes, well, if I love Krishna, does that mean I don't love anybody else? And Srila Prabhupada gives much discussion around, by loving Krishna, we actually come to love everyone. Our family, our society, our nation, even the animals, the birds, the bees, all living entities. And so on page 15 of the preface, the quote, Nectar devotion teaches us the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by the easy method of loving Krishna. And the other quote I wanted to read is, the Nectar devotion will teach us how to turn that one switch that will immediately brighten everywhere, everything. This is the power of loving Krishna. It is the true United Nations process that can bring us to harmony with all living entities. So it is not that by loving Krishna, I will not love everyone else. No. It is like the root of the tree. When I water the root of the tree, all the different branches of the tree are nourished. But if I try to nourish each individual branch, nothing happens. Expressing our love to all the different, relationships we have in material world, they don't accomplish anything. But when I learn to love Krishna, then automatically all of the relationships become nourished. Like all of the branches of the tree are nourished by watering the root. Krishna being the root. He illuminates everything. And the love of Krishna is so perfect because he is perfect. Krishna's ability to reciprocate with us is unlimited. He knows exactly what we need. He is never limited by time. Oh, I wanted to do this, but I ran out of time. And he is never limited by ability. So whatever desires the pure devotee has in the heart are fully reciprocated with by loving Krishna. And so this eternal nature that we have of love, again, is only fulfilled when we learn to love Krishna. And that is the ultimate point of this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The sum and substance of the nectar devotion is our love can be fully satisfied only when it is reposed to Krishna. And the second quote I wanted to conclude with is, the nectar of devotion teaches us how to stimulate our original love for Krishna and how to be situated in that position where we can enjoy our blissful life. All of our material advancement, all of our increase in wealth, it has not made us happy. Why? Because this dormant loving propensity to Krishna has not been awakened. We're searching where to repose our love, satisfying this need for it. But until we find it with Krishna, we'll not find the happiness. We can acquire all the wealth, all the fame, all the beauty, all the power, but it will not give us the happiness we desire. But Rupa Goswami is teaching us how to awaken this original love. This is our original position, loving Krishna. And then we can enjoy a blissful life. So the nectar devotion is going to give us very practical hints on how to live within this material world and be perfectly engaged in devotional service. So within this material world, how we can awaken this dormant love that's residing within our heart. We don't have to go find it somewhere. We just have to find it from within and awaken it. And how to awaken it, that is the process Srila Rupa Goswami is going to present to us in the coming chapters. Exactly how to do it, the scientific way, step by step, so that we can find this perfection of life and this ultimate blissful life. So that is the preface. So I'll pause here and take any questions or comments, discussion.
There's a question online.
Okay.
Prabhuji, what is difference between Madhurya Rasa and Bhakti Rasa? Which is most important?
So, Bhakti Rasa is experienced in 5 primary relationships with Krishna. There is Shanta Rasa, Dasya Rasa, Sakya Rasa, Vatsalya Rasa, and Madhurya Rasa. So there are 5 primary relationships, and we'll talk about this in the coming weeks, within Bhakti Rasa. So Madhurya Rasa is one of the rasas within Bhakti Rasa. It is a subcategory. And we'll see how of the 5 primary rasas, the Madhurya Rasa is the most intense and most rich in experience of love. So it is not one or the other, but Madhurya Rasa is a category within Bhakti Rasa. And again, we'll discuss more of this coming up in the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Prabhu, how can we experience the love of Krishna?
So we experience the love of Krishna by rendering devotional service. Every service we perform for Krishna, he is responding. And that response is his love. So we sometimes fail to perceive that response or that love. And that may be some of your question. So when we go to the temple, there is some feeling that we get there, right? There's some feeling of peace, some feeling of happiness, Where is that coming from? That is directly coming from Krishna. That is giving us the happiness. That is his love. When we read some sweet pastime of Krishna or we hear something of Krishna, there is an experience of happiness and enjoyment. That is Krishna's love for us. When we chant his holy names, maybe there's love, maybe there's a little bit of, I got to get through it. But that once in a while we may experience this really sweet chanting of the holy names. Maybe we go for Mangal Arti during Gaur Purnima or one of the festivals and we experience this bliss. What is that bliss? That is Krishna's love. So sometimes that experience is a little bit faint and sometimes it's very strong. So it's like, you go outside and the sun is out, but there are clouds covering. When the clouds are covering, the heat of the sun is not so powerful. The light of the sun is not so bright. But the sun is there. We know it's there, and I'm perceiving it, but it's in limited ways. But by the power of the sun, we know the clouds can be dissipated. And when the clouds are dissipated, then I feel the full power of the sun. So what are those clouds? Those clouds are our own impurities. The impurities that prevent us from fully relishing the love and taste of Krishna. Remember, back to Anartha Nivritti. Once we cleanse ourselves of all of these anarthas, then we become fixed and then the taste comes. So we'll experience glimpses of that love through the pleasure we experience in devotional service. And we'll continue to experience more and more as we cleanse the heart. And that is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. That we must clean the Darpana, the heart, by chanting of the holy names. And the more we do, the more we'll experience these aspects of bliss. We're coming up on Rath Yatra season. Why is Rath Yatra festival one festival everybody seems to enjoy? No matter what, they can't even put their finger on it, what it is they're enjoying or why. That is Krishna's reciprocation. That is a direct experience of love. So it is there. We are experiencing it, sometimes strongly, sometimes less. And as we purify, we remove the clouds, we'll experience it more and more and more.
So Prabhu, it's maybe I understand, Prabhu, like what you explained. So it's more a subtle thing for us to understand this, right? Maybe because we may not realize, as you are saying, that it's coming to us, but maybe we are not realizing that it is the love of Krishna which is even if I take one step in my devotional activity, that is again from the love of Krishna. That is how we should understand.
Yeah, but it's not so subtle, right? Because let's take the example of chanting, right? If there was no tangible experience of chanting, we wouldn't do it. If going to the temple, if there was no tangible experience, you wouldn't come. We wouldn't come, right? So it's actually tangible. It's not subtle. We just sometimes don't see it, but it's real. It's right there. There is something that is inspired because we're getting something out of it. We feel good. There's a sense of happiness. Why we have given up some other activities in our practice of devotional service. The only reason we've given them up is because we're getting more happiness out of what we've added. So it is actually tangible. It's not so subtle. We just sometimes don't appreciate it. And so by speaking about it, we'll be able to, again, oh yeah, wait, no, that is actually the love. And Rupa Goswami will explain that the beginning qualification to do bhakti is some attraction. And that attraction leads us to render service. And when we render some service, it increases our attraction. And that attraction then fuels us to do more service. And that more service leads to more attraction. And that cycle continues and it starts to spin. And it never stops. So we have started to spin it because why else would we be here today? Because there's some tangible experience. If we said, Prabhu, you chant your rounds and you render service, but there was absolutely no reciprocation, you might do it for a week or 2 weeks or a month. But if there was absolutely no experience you had of yourself, eventually you would stop. Just like I'll give a mundane example. If someone tells you it's very good to go to the gym, and you go to the gym, after the first day, if your body is not transformed, okay, you're willing to be patient. But after a month of going to the gym, 2 months, 6 months, a year, and you see absolutely no change, you feel no change, are you going to still go? No. Because you need some response back. So in devotional service, Krishna is constantly acknowledging our service. He's constantly expressing his love. And that's why we continue. Otherwise, we would not continue. So it is not so subtle. It is actually very tangible. It's real. You can pinpoint it. I'm getting more pleasure attending Sunday feast than watching football. I don't know. I may not know why, but it's there. I'm actually enjoying it more. It's amazing. When I wash a pot in Krishna's temple, it is so much more enjoyable than when my wife makes me wash a pot at home. I don't know why, but it's real. That's bhakti. So.
Okay, Prabhu. So, Prabhu, one more question, Prabhu. So this mundane rasa and bhakti rasa, when you were speaking, what I was thinking was like the example of the cup fully filled with water up to the brim. So maybe from the honest perspective of the mind is not always full with Krishna.
Yes.
Because of our mental activities that we are having, that we need to accomplish a lot. Obviously, we are living in this mundane rasa. That's why maybe the flickering is happening. We feel like we want to chant one day in the morning. Next day, okay, that's fine. We do it sometime later. So, like this stage of bhakti rasa, I, of course, the previous class you said it's not easy, but we are still living in this mundane rasa only, right? So, because your mind should be fully filled with Krishna to reach bhakti rasa. So, I don't know how to understand this.
maybe slightly different approaches. So the flickering we are doing between bhakti and our mundane attachments is our progressive stage of coming to pure devotional service. So, but the rasa of bhakti is not flickering, but our engagement in bhakti may be yet developing, right? So we're still in the trying it out phase, you know? We're still in the let me test it out. Is it really working phase? So we kind of bounce back between our mundane material activities and our spiritual activities. But the rasa from bhakti is not flickering, but our experience of it, because as you said, our mind is not yet fully purified. And Rupa Goswami is going to explain that. And then he's going to give us the processes to follow this. And that's why, because the mind is not yet fully purified, we start at the platform called Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, which means that we perform bhakti under the instruction and guidance of Guru and Shastra. Because the internal impetus, the natural spontaneity is not yet there. Because I have some still spontaneity attraction to other things. I know they're not good for me, but my heart and my natural disposition takes me there. So we follow Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, and we'll get into much detail about that. Actually, the bulk of this section of Nectar devotion is dedicated to Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, where we follow specific angas of devotional service, which help us purify of all of these other desires so that we can taste the incalculably superior rasa of bhakti. But right now, we perceive superior rasa maybe in other activities, right? So, and that is why Prabhupada writes in the preface too, that this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is going to give us practical hints at how to live within the material world and be fully engaged in devotional service. Something we think in our mind to be impossible. Well, I can't be in this material world and, manage the responsibilities of my family and job and society and whatnot and be in full bhakti. And this Nectar of Devotion is going to show us actually how to do that. So that we're no longer thinking, well, I have to do my material activities and then I can do my spiritual activities. We're going to see very practically how to do it all together. So, that's okay, Prabhu?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, nice questions. Thank you.
Prabhuji, I just wanted to add, not add, or rather ask, like Kaushik Prabhuji was asking about the reciprocation, how Krishna reciprocates, how we can see. Can we also perceive it in the sense, like, for example, if you're going to the temple every Sunday, and we are obviously experiencing some kind of happiness there, and that's the reason why we're going there. And for one reason, for all the Sundays, one Sunday you don't go, how terrible you feel inside. I mean, how that also goes to show there's something that was so missing. That's why, I can't express, but there is some feeling that you feel. Yeah. So guilty, even for the chanting, you don't do it. For example, if you're not able to do it, how miserable you feel inside. So I think, is that a way to also consider that some reciprocation?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we miss it, there's an absence of, we appreciate. Sometimes we don't appreciate what we have until we don't have it, right? That is a nature. Familiarity breeds contempt. Sometimes when we don't have it, then we appreciate, what I have.